I took hold of his hand and I looked right into his eyes. And he moved his head forward, like inches from my face, and he has my hand and he looks right in my eyes. And then his eyes went, just wiggled. And this overwhelming, it sounds very trite, but it was love, went through my whole body. I feel so fortunate to have been able to meet Dr. Pong. And he is such a humble being, yet so empowered. And that's what I want to be like when I grow up.
That's amazing. You've met Dr. Pang. Oh, can you tell me a bit more about that, please? I mean, I've spoken to Chinese teachers who studied at the center and they didn't even have a chance to meet him. So how'd that happen?
Well, when we went in 1996 with Luke Chan to the center, we were told it probably would not happen. And then the next thing you know, we are being hustled into this big group. And there were 12 of us, 12 non-Asians, and we were the first to ever be invited to the center outside of China. So it was very exciting. And all of a sudden we realized, oh, you've seen the pictures of Dr. Pong, and he's shaking hands with each person individually. Well, first we got to do that. And when we went up, we were told to say, we were supposed to just bow. Luke Chen was prepping us, bow, and just say, Pang Lao Shi, and that's it. And I couldn't do that. I took hold of his hand and I looked right into his eyes. And he moved his head forward, like inches from my face, and he has my hand and he looks right in my eyes. And then his eyes went, just wiggled. And this overwhelming, it sounds very trite, but it was love, went through my whole body. He did that 3 times. I could barely stand. I was so overwhelmed. And the first thing I thought was, I'm an American idiot to think that I did not trust to just allow this to be. And I'm thinking all these thoughts, my ego and my logic came forth. And I bumped in between. It was like an umbrella of teachers on both sides, and they were all chanting and hala, hala, hala. And I walked through this umbrella of teachers and I thought, oh, that's why they do that, so you don't fall over. And then I went back and sat on my little stool that we were given, and I broke down, sobbing, wailing. It was so embarrassing, and I couldn't stop. And I knew I was having a release, but I was so embarrassed. And some Chinese teachers started gathering around me, and they were all saying, "Haola, haola, haola." And all I could think of was, perhaps I will spontaneously combust, and then I won't have to be here being embarrassed in this situation. But I eventually stopped. And as I said before, it was a pivotal transformational change in my life, just being there. And that was just one experience. And we had so many. And it's interesting that having those experiences and coming back to my normal life, the transitional process was a bit challenging.
Thank you for sharing that. That is so profound, and it sounds exactly how I would react. For me, I can only imagine what that must have felt like. I think there is so much consciousness probably in Dr. Pang, like when he looks at you, you can just feel all that chi. It must be so intense, but so fortunate for you to have experienced that. Can you tell me a bit more about your healing journey after you were diagnosed with cancer? How can Zhineng Qigong help with healing something as severe as cancer? At least in your experience, I know you said you had your doubts and that was your proof that it worked. But what was that like? Or how did you understand that process that took place, that amazing healing that you experienced?
I actually had cancer 3 times.
Wow.
The first time, they were all stage 4. But the first time I didn't understand what happened, I was just so grateful. I could never explain or begin to understand what happened, only that I knew something had changed. Had I not had surgery, I wouldn't have known the extent of the change. And I can remember being at the center in China. We were also asked, we were fortunate to be a small group and we could ask Dr. Pong questions. And at first, none of us could speak because we didn't know what to ask. And then someone asked a question and said, well, if Zhineng Qigong is so powerful and so effective, why is that plant dead in the room? And Dr. Pong looked over at the plant and he said, the translation was, perhaps no water. And we all laughed, but I realized that what he was saying was so much more. Later, I realized so much more than perhaps no water. You have to have this awareness. You have to have the connection. And I remember asking him, if many of the teachers can see through the body, then why don't you just heal us? Why do we have to do all this work? And he said, because if I heal you, I will be removing whatever it is, let's say a tumor, but none of the symptoms associated with that disharmony. So after my first healing, I feel like that's exactly what I did. I eliminated the tumor. But I hadn't had enough practice, enough learning and inner connection to eliminate the symptoms. So the second time it was very close. And I had the same type of surgery. And again, they found nothing. And then the third time was many years later, and it was called a different kind of cancer, but it's just stuck Qi. And now I had a lot more information. So personally, this is just my story. I had been telling my story for a while, and I had been saying, I'm the kind of person who needs to be hit over the head 3 times before I realize and have an understanding. And my third bout, it suddenly occurred to me that I had been manifesting this for a long time. I had been saying it in my classes and I meant it. So 3 times I get hit over the head before I understand. 3 times I have cancer. And I started thinking about everything. There are 3 dantians. There are 3 forms in nature, all through my Qigong practice, 3 substances. Everything's 3s. And I thought, oh my gosh, I just haven't put it together. And I knew after that specific disharmony, I would never have it again. I just knew that. It had all merged together. My understanding and my trust. I didn't have enough trust in myself. I knew 100% you could do it. but I doubted myself. That changed that. I knew positively, without a doubt, there was no doubt that would never happen again. And each time I had surgery, each time stage 4 cancer was not found. So I had already done it, but I had to be shown the proof in order for me to collate the information inside. So we can all do this. Everybody has the capacity. I'm no different or special than anyone else. We all have this ability and we can all do it. It's just the progression of learning.
And when you actually went about healing when you were diagnosed at either of these 3 stages, do you think it is beneficial to actually dedicate more time to your practice then, just to build up more chi, or do you think it really boils down to a willingness to learn and not the amount of time you spend practicing, even when it comes to something as severe as cancer?
I think, again, it goes back to the quality, not the quantity. I knew it wasn't going to benefit me to do 200 wall squats. I knew what I had to do was go inside. And that's where the transformation and the change came from. But the first time, even leading to the second time, I felt it had to be all physical and outside. And I think that's why it took some time for me. But for each individual person, there's a progression and a process that you have to go through. And some people, it takes a very short period of time, and others it takes longer. But if you are willing to continue to do the work, it will happen. Usually you get little snippets of a change, and that gives you the motivation and the inspiration to continue on. And that's why we keep doing what we do. We are always going to have something. It doesn't matter what you label it. One of my teachers years ago said, we are all in the recycle business. Once we're born, we're recycling to die. So you can't expect everything to be perfect, because we do become tired at some point in time. Like, I can't believe I just keep doing this over and over and over. When you switch your mindset, mix it up, form and formless together, then you really begin to change and things transform. Anything is possible. You should never think that it's not possible. It doesn't matter what it is or what the label is. That's just a label. And we are not statistics. When you are diagnosed with a terminal disease, you're always put in a category of statistics. This is the stage you are. Statistically, these are your chances. We're not statistics. We're all individual beings with choices. So we can change whatever it is we're given. It's a matter of the willingness to do it. And sometimes we run out of time. So we continue to process that not in the physical body anymore. We just run out of time. We're almost there, but it just didn't happen. I don't believe there are any age limitations whatsoever. It's just different. At the center in China, that was the first group we worked with, children from the age of a toddler up to about 8 or 9 years old. And it was so amazing. I thought, these teachers with these children, they're like angels, and they made it fun. Touch the sky, touch the earth, become the branches and the leaves. become the roots of the tree. They made it so fun for them, but they were learning. And we saw these transformations in these children, all ages. And it was so overwhelming for us, you know, and the poor children, here we are, these non-Asians, most of them had never seen anyone except, you know, their race. And we're taller and we're so white. And the one mother came up and she's just going on in Chinese. And the translation was, "You have to watch my son. He has not spoken since birth. He has never said a word. There's nothing wrong with his hearing. He's never spoken. He could not walk. He couldn't do anything." So we gather around this little boy, you know, we're staring at him. And he looked up, and the first thing he did was look around at us, and he just started crying. He was just a toddler. And so we stepped back. We realized, you know, what are we doing? Just staring down at this little boy. So we all separated and we kept watching from afar. And the mother said, "Don't go away." Translation was, "Please watch." And all of a sudden, he had cerebral palsy, this little boy. And all of a sudden, he stood up as straight as a stick. And he started to walk, and he took big marching steps, big high marching steps. And then he began to walk normally. And the mother was just so happy, and he could speak. And I don't know how long he had been there. I don't recall that anymore. But she was so happy and so excited. And my question was, why did he start marching and then walking normally? That was an interesting to see that gait change. And the teacher, the translation was, he now understands what his physical body should be doing. He recognizes that as normal inside, but his physical body hasn't caught up with that yet. So that's why he marches first and then steps into that regular rhythm of walking. So it was really fascinating. Of course, as Westerners, we were all crying because to us, it was just so amazing. We were told many times in China, you cannot cry anymore. That's ridiculous. Get over it, learn, quit being so emotional. Habit. It was all, this is the routine. We would wake up at 4:45 in the morning, and we had to be ready at our practice site at 5 a.m. And it's all done outside. And then you practiced from 5 to 7, and then you had breakfast from 7 to 8. And then you practiced from 8 until lunch. And then you practiced at lunch, it was at noon, and then you had 2-hour break. And then you practiced from 2 o'clock until 6, and then from 7 until 10. And that's the normal progression. And as Westerners, we would take a nap after lunch from noon to 2, because this seemed like a whole lot of work. And after the third day we were there, Luke came and said, "We are losing face. No one else takes a nap. They practice. So you cannot nap anymore." And we're like, "What?" And we were the only ones complaining. At 4:45, everybody's singing and marching out to their practice site, and we're going, "No coffee, tea, toast." And we're all complaining. They never complained. And I could see where we probably really looked weak and uninspired in every way. What happened after we quit trying to take a nap and we started to just practice, we would just practice outside. We would talk to each other and say, well, how's this working for you? What's happening here? Can you do this? And then teachers would walk by from China. They would see us practicing and they would come in, even though we couldn't understand a word. If there was no translator, they would show us how to change what we were doing. And we became a part of the whole then. We were no longer observers, we were participants. And everything changed after that, everything. So it's interesting, we don't like change.
Yeah, very true.
We're interesting beings, aren't we?
Very interesting, very curious to observe in yourself and in others, I think.
Yeah. We have the ability to use this consciousness, but the large majority of people do not. So I think we are extremely fortunate to have this practice and to be able to go deeper and deeper and open our consciousness, open our heart, and see ourselves for what we truly are.